So here is the thing. I, listeners, have always been a thriller series person detective, thriller, horror. Nandini has always been the stark opposite comedy, feel good, simple. But this time, for the first time, we found a series on Netflix that said it was comedy and a thriller, and we thought, wow, the best of both the worlds.
Yeah.
But honestly, first time, we did not get what we really wanted or expected from the series.
Yeah, and I think Netflix and everything that I searched online as well about this series, it kind of fooled us because everyone was like, it's comedy, it's a thriller, it's a mystery. And you kept looking for that. I mean, I remember
Yeah,
by the end of what, like episode 2 or 3, I remember you said, if I were to review this series on our podcast, I don't think I would give it a high rating. So let's just
I
not talk about
remember.
it.
Because see, the thing is, Nandini, I had thought that it says thriller, so it was a minor theft. That is exactly what it said in the small summary. And I thought, as usual in any crime series, a minor theft always would lead to something bigger. There will be a murder, and there'll be mystery, and there'll be several suspects, and oh my god, it's going to be fun. But honestly, as we started watching, nothing was as I had expected.
I remember.
Nothing was going in that direction. It was slow and it was about people. And then that's
I
the reason I was getting very disappointed as I watched
I
it.
think I think for the first 2 or 3 episodes, we didn't even know what we were watching. Like
Exactly.
we were just trying to sort of associate it to a genre, and I was like, I can't quite place what it
We
is.
were forcing ourselves to place in either of the genres.
Yeah. But the most interesting part about this series is that by the end of it, we both gave it a really high rating.
Yes, we did.
And obviously, I mean, if we're dedicating an entire episode to it today, it is a must watch. So let's talk a bit about why A Man on the Inside should be your next pick.
Hello, listeners. For everyone new and the returning, I am Mukta along with my daughter Nandini here to give you spoiler free recommendations of what to watch next.
And this time, on our endless scrolling journey on Netflix, we stumbled upon A Man on the Inside. Now, I have to say, usually, I don't know what's the word for it, but Netflix gives you that 30-second preview as you are scrolling of a series or a movie. And the preview for this Man on the Inside, I watched it and I was like, it looks good, but is it something worth a watch? And I was like, it's not very interesting. It's just random.
Don't lose hope, listeners, because you must be thinking, then why is it that we are reviewing it today? So there were a few reasons why we then finally decided to watch it. One, it aligned with both our favorite genres.
Yeah.
So we thought, all right, let's give it a try. And then, to top it all, it had 8 episodes in total, and each episode was just 30 minutes. So we thought, quick watch, even if it doesn't turn out to be good or lives up to our expectation, we thought it's okay. We'd not end up wasting a lot of time actually.
Yeah. But before going into why this show really left sort of a mark on us, let's talk a little bit about where it actually draws its inspiration from. So, this series, A Man on the Inside, its plot is largely inspired by a real life story, and that's of a widower, Sergio Chami. Now, Sergio, he was hired to go undercover as a resident at a nursing home in Chile. Now, Sergio's client, the client who hired Sergio, he believed that his mother was being mistreated at this nursing home. So he asked Sergio to go there and look for signs of ill treatment by the staff.
So let me also then remind you, Sergio was 83 years old. Now, in the end, Sergio discovers, listeners, that the client's mother actually was being treated well, and he actually ended up making great friends.
Exactly, and interestingly, Sergio at the end said that his biggest discovery from all of this was that residents in that nursing home experienced loneliness.
So, listeners, Man on the Inside, the series, actually draws from this real life story. Now, the main character, Ted Danson, he plays the role of Charles Newendike, a 75-year-old widower and a retired professor of engineering, who is hired by Julie, a private investigator. Now, he has been tasked to investigate a missing ruby necklace at an old age home called Pacific View Retirement Community. Now, Charles, He becomes Julie's man on the inside and is secretly trying to find the thief.
So Charles, like my mom said, Charles in this series, he lives on his own before he becomes Julie's assistant. Now Charles's daughter, Emily, she continues to tell her dad, "Dad, you need to find a purpose." That's why, luckily, he comes across an ad to become Julie's assistant and then enters Pacific View as an undercover resident.
What a purpose, from a professor to an undercover agent. But honestly, listeners, from the start, he becomes everyone's favorite. Now, women there started to flirt with him. I think he attended a few parties. He played backgammon with his friends while he continued to investigate for Julie.
And honestly, it made my heart happy to see him so happy when he
I know.
first entered the facility. And I remember he also told Julie, I think, that I don't know how to be a spy, but it's good for me because it makes me feel useful.
Oh, seriously.
And Charles delivers that line with just, I don't know, so much sincerity that like you really start to feel for him and people like him who have perhaps retired, grown old, or just think they've lost some kind of purpose in life.
I must mention, I had earlier watched Ted Danson's series called Criminals.
Of course,
And
you
his
did.
role, no surprise. So he had played a very different character in that. And looking at his role in this one, it was such an opposite. It was such a contrast.
I can imagine.
But anyway, this show is not just about thrill, as we had said. It also had subtle comedy. Let us not disappoint you by saying this or not mentioning. So it does keep it alive. So at Pacific View, Charles makes some very good friends, including Calbert. So initially, if you remember, Nandini, Charles had met Calbert playing backgammon.
Oh, yeah.
And Calbert is like the serious character. He doesn't talk a lot. And Charles, on the contrary, just doesn't know how to stop. So he just continues to talk. And Calbert gets a little irritated and says, "I don't like people who talk too much." But Charles just doesn't stop even after that.
Completely unaware.
I know. But it is beautiful to watch how he eventually ends up winning everyone's heart with his empathy, love, compassion.
Exactly. And all this while, in the background, Charles continues to gather evidence and investigate the mystery of that stolen necklace, which is why he was there at the old age home. And what I also really liked about that is the writers use very clever storytelling. So I remember this one instance where Charles is recording everything on his dictaphone for Julie, the private detective. And he starts with, "Okay, Julie, to recap, we have a list of suspects. We have 4 suspects, X, Y, Z, da, da, da." And I think that as a viewer is so helpful because it's easy to get lost with names and faces, and because you're being introduced to so much all at once. So as a viewer, I personally really appreciate good storytelling.
And because it was 30 minutes each, it was moving too fast.
Exactly.
But then I think now I'm reminded 4 suspects. Julie had thought he would come up with perhaps 1,
Yeah.
the most potent one, and he says 4. So as we said, right, there is subtle comedy to it.
Yeah, I also remember this one instance when initially when Julie meets Charles and Charles says, "Oh, you've hired me, Julie. Do you have faith in me?" And then Julie says, "Charles, I think you are the best option in a sea of not very good options." So that comedy is good. Like there is comedy that keeps it alive for you.
Yeah, but definitely, as you said, clever storytelling. So interesting, Nandini, you also mentioned the word mystery, right? I mean, they say it's a mystery, it's a thriller. But honestly, by episode 3, or I think it was 4, I realized, listeners, this was neither. It was not a thriller or a mystery. It was not about core comedy. It was only and only about emotion.
Yeah.
Human emotion at best.
Very well said, because I read somewhere that the creator of the show, and to quote him, he said, "I would say the purpose of this show is simply to discuss a subject that very few people discuss, and that is aging." Which I believe is so true because you see so much loneliness, so much emotion, and with loneliness, I think it's just hard as an emotion to explain to anyone.
It is. It indeed is. And on the topic of hard to explain and the phrases that you just mentioned, Nandini, loneliness can be difficult at any age.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you remember Didi Santos, the director of Pacific View, she's often shown to feel very lonely. So you
Yeah.
remember there were moments when she's just lying on the floor, slipping underneath his desk. And then she's listening to this calming music and piecing herself together. There's this picture of her mother under the desk, and she's looking at
yeah.
it continuously. So there's not So the series does not have a dialogue here or anything to support what is happening. But as a viewer, you immediately see that she suffers. She's so finding it so difficult to explain what she's going through. She's suffering because people around her are suffering, and she has to see this every day, in and out. Constantly, there are people who join the Pacific View, and then some people just go. So it says a lot without saying anything.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to put it. And staying on the themes, like there's one of aging, there's definitely loneliness, as you said, and it also touches on memory loss. So if you remember, Charles, he lost his wife to memory loss. And you can see throughout the series that weighs really heavily on him. Like even when he goes to Pacific View, he meets a woman called Gladys, and she also suffers from these memory problems. And because Charles has been through that through his wife, he's shown to be so sweet and empathetic towards Gladys. I mean, episode 5, I think it was, focuses a lot on their friendship, and honestly, that entire episode will just leave you smiling.
Honestly, I totally agree. And despite all of this emotion, listeners, it's not a heavy series.
No, not at all.
It is not heavy on your head or heart. Sometimes it'll leave you smiling, sometimes it'll leave you welled up. I remember, Nandini, I'd mentioned this. So, listeners, we've lived in Netherlands for a few years, and we used to often walk towards our grocery store almost every second evening. And there was this house in the corner that housed a Dutch couple, a very old couple.
Oh, yeah.
Most of the times I would see them with their oxygen cylinders clipped in. And that man, he was always lying on the sofa, and he would be looking outside. Their curtains would be open, so they wouldn't be drawn. So you would always see them. I think what we had started doing was each time going and coming back from the grocery store, we used to just wave to him and he would smile. And I would love to see that smile. And one day, as it happens, unfortunately, we didn't see the man in. And after a couple of days, when we did not see him, we knew what had happened. Unfortunately, I think he was gone. And I saw the woman all by herself, his wife. Nandi and I, we bought flowers and we knocked at her door. She did not recognize us, perhaps because the man knew us more.
Yeah.
But honestly, that few moments, Nandi, that we were standing there, they said a lot. And somehow the series instantly reminded me of them.
No, and if you remember with that woman, she didn't speak English. We didn't speak a word of Dutch. But she and us, we both knew what exactly we were talking about. Like, it was just, I don't know, take it like you will, but I think it was just emotions talking at that point, because she was at such a low state in her life. We knew what had happened, so it was a really touching memory that I will never forget.
Exactly.
And it's these kind of memories that this show really brings about. Another thing, what I really liked about this show was it had a very sweet father-daughter relationship.
In agreement.
I feel like a lot of series off late that I have watched just put an overwhelming emphasis on strained relationships between parents and their children, which eventually mend, but it just shows that it just starts off really bad. Here, though, it was really fresh. I really liked seeing Charles and his daughter Emily interact. There was also an instance where Emily actually enters the facility, the Pacific View facility, just to check up on her dad, and she quickly gets involved in the investigation. So it's so nice to see those like two amateur detectives and father and daughter coming up with code words and code moves. It was just very refreshing.
Very, very. So listeners, to go back to what we had said in the beginning, while Nandini and I, both of us, do not think it was a mystery or a comedy in particular, this series, A Man on the Inside, smartly uses mystery and subtle comedy as a way to communicate a much larger message. And that is what makes this series worth a while.
Oh, absolutely.
And indeed, I mean, let's make it very clear to you. Indeed, there was a theft. Indeed, Charles was investigating. But when the mystery does get solved at the end, we promise you, listeners, it will sweetly surprise you. It will touch your heart.
Oh, that's true.
And eventually, listeners, you will see when everyone in the facility learns the truth about Charles being an undercover agent, you can see very clearly that they're all hurt because they're so connected with him.
Yeah.
It was very emotional to see the time that Charles has to leave the facility after the mystery was solved. But Charles, as he continues to be there for his friends and trying to play his part in making them feel less lonely. Again, nothing was said about this. But as a viewer, you would instantly connect and you would know this is the message.
Yeah.
And honestly, viewers, listeners, this show, the series will resonate with everyone. You can be old, young, but anyone who has older parents, who has older loved ones around them, you would love to watch this. Me as a daughter with old parents, honestly, watching the series left me with a lot of emotion and thought. I also thought, my parents living far away from them, they're just by themselves. I not after this, but honestly, I found value in spending more and more time with them in terms of talking to them every day. I think this is the least we can do for parents who are getting old. Let's not just let loneliness touch them in any way.
Absolutely. And to zoom out, again, I would strongly suggest don't watch it if you're expecting a solid mystery. Don't go in with that mindset. It's gonna ruin, I guess, the feel of the show for you. This, like you were saying earlier, Mom, it's something bigger. It uses just the concepts of a mystery to really make such a good point, and it's so sweet. It will literally leave you smiling throughout.
And with the fun, the parties, the luxury games, and funny, flirtatious men and women around.
Yeah, that's a plus. So it was for all of these reasons that we both gave it a solid 10. And now we are eagerly waiting for season 2, and that's expected to launch in November of this year.
We just can't wait.
Exactly. So, with that, we're going to wrap up this review. And for our next episode, as promised, we are reviewing a Hindi series. And that is a satire on the Indian legal system.
And we promise you will burst out laughing.
So do stick around for that review and all other interesting reviews and formats that we'll bring to you over the next couple of weeks. And in the meantime, do watch A Man on the Inside.